Good afternoon, Buick peeps. It's Brett Slater here, the curator of Lord Vader. It's something I've been wanting to do for a little while. I was lucky enough to have a couple of very knowledgeable Buick people at my disposal the entire time that I've had this vehicle. First and foremost, Dave Johnson from Drake, Mass. He is essentially a walking assembly manual. It can tell you every nut, bolt, fastener, finish, bracket, paint color on these cars. So I've picked his brain quite extensively since I've owned this vehicle. So let's start. This is a 1970 Stage 1, this fourth week of December build. So it kind of qualifies as what they call an early build, but there are some parts on it that would be found on the later part of the model year and then through 71 and 72 as well. But we'll get to that in a minute. So as far as finish goes, this is pretty much an unmolested car. Again, this is more engine bay correctness. A couple things that I would like you to pretend aren't there are the Mickey Thompson Super Scavenger headers, and also the early Edelbrock B4B. My intention when I was replacing this engine last year, right in the beginning of the pandemic, was to have a set of exhaust manifolds ported. Some of you may know that can tend to be rather expensive, and also I would have had to have bought an entire new exhaust system. So basically I ran out of money. So I used what I had. Kind of glad I did. Car sounds good, runs like a bear, but it's not 100% correct. But I would say this is probably 90% correct, maybe 93-ish. So we'll go over that in a minute. First of all, it's a manual drum car. So as you can see, there's no booster. It's just a manual master cylinder. And actually that is a replacement. 2 weeks after I bought this car, that's the first thing that went. And it just so happened I was 30 miles from home. So that was a fun ride home. However, I did keep the original, which is over here. And the two master cylinders you would find on an A-body Buick in 1970 anyway. They have two codes, and you can see this little pad right here. The code for this, let me get in there, is CT. This cylinder would have been used on manual drums and power drums. If your car has discs, power disc, then the code on that little front pad would read EA. Okay? Moving on, you'll see the marking on the firewall back there. That's an MC. As these cars were coming down the assembly line, the workers would mark off in crayon which components the car would need. So MC means manual brake clutch, manual clutch, MC. When I had this motor out, there was actually remnants of the C left, the original assembly line markings. So I just kind of improvised, and that's where we're at. The master cylinder cover, courtesy of Don Hudson down in Texas, is plated correctly. And my intention is to actually have that original master cylinder rebuilt and then put it back on the car. There's a place, I think in Virginia, called White Post that rebuilds them, refurbishes them. Moving on, this is the hose that you would need from the breather to the air cleaner. Another Dave Johnson piece. He meticulously spent a lot of time with these. He bought a whole bunch of them from Cars down in New Jersey, and then he had them stamped. He actually stamped them himself. He had the stamp made and bought them, and then stamped them all up. I know he sold a lot of these to guys on V8 Buick. Another misconception, or a misconception I should say, is this breather hose, or this, I don't know what the hell it's called, heat stove hose that essentially doesn't work because I have headers. Nonetheless, it's there. They are black. They're not silver. I see them silver sometimes, and that's not correct. They should be black. And the heat stove there underneath it, where the hose connects to, is zinc phosphate. Don Hudson also hooked me up with that. Moving along here, the power steering bracket, I had blasted it and clear coated it, so it should be the natural color. These brackets, however, should be zinc phosphate, like the heat stove. These are the correct radiator hose clamps, Whittick tower clamps, 2 1/16, I believe. There's 4 of them, 1 here, 1 on the thermostat, and then 2 on the other side as well. And then you can see another Dave Johnson stamp. He did all these when he was doing his frame off on his yellow GSX that has been passed around Mecum a few times and actually maintained its selling price. So I mentioned earlier this was an early build car. So this radiator top plate is plastic, and it's 3 pieces. The 2 metal ends, you'll see here, and then this is plastic. This was a change that they made probably a week or 2 after this car was built. They went to a whole 1-piece metal, and also the overflow tank would get a black top. This is actually an NOS piece that my friend Dan was kind enough to grab for me at the Nats last year. So I had a repro and I sold it. Todd Miller is supposedly in the works to have those reproduced, so hopefully he does, because I'm sure there's a lot of guys out there that could use them. Another misconception is the air cleaner lid. This is an original air cleaner lid. I'm not sure if you can tell by the light here, but it's glossy. It's also 51 years old, but it's still glossy. If you look in the old magazine, the car reviews, road tests, anytime you see one of these, that lid is going to be glossy and nothing else. If you see one that's not glossy, chances are it was changed. But you also can't rule out assembly line screw-ups, because those guys were shit-faced half the time. All right. Okay, so the early build would get, again, the plastic radiator cover, and then the clear top, and then the gauges, interior gauges, the lenses have a point to them. This car doesn't. These are flat. So this car is what has been described by some as a transition vehicle, where they were transitioning to the metal radiator cover and then the black top and the flat lenses. The reason they changed the flat lenses was because the guys that were doing the road tests in the magazines couldn't see the gauges due to the glare from the sun. The pointy lenses had a distinct glare to them. So they changed over to the flat ones. Moving on, this is a Harrison radiator. It's a 3-core radiator. I don't know if you can see Harrison. It's still there. I just had this redone. I got a great radiator guy up here in southeastern Massachusetts. These cars, the stage ones, or the heavy duty cooling was 3-core. No Buick ever came with a 4-core, ever. If it's in there, it's wrong. Okay. And then I have the battery topper here, which is just kind of a whatever. But also the correct reproduction battery cables, the spring ring ones. Those are available from Todd Miller also. Todd Miller is responsible for probably about 50% of the fasteners and parts on this car. We're very thankful and grateful to actually have someone like that that is such an enthusiast and always willing to help and always has stuff on hand. Okay. So we'll move on to some more fasteners and finish stuff here. I only have two hands, so all right. So the correct clamps for these heater hoses, as you can see, I think, are those pesky little Corbin clamps. You never see them on the cars because, quite frankly, the worm clamps are just that much easier, but I decided to use them on this. Except for this one right here, it's a worm clamp because last year that hose came loose because I'm pretty sure it's the fitting coming out of the intake that might be smaller than stock. Nonetheless, antifreeze just pissed all over the engine compartment, so in an effort to stop that, I just used the worm clamp, and I'll get around to fixing that another time. I'm running a Quadrajet, dialed in and tuned by my friend Rob Ross. This is a 72 or 3 Quadrajet. That was, it came with this car when I bought it. Dan had bought it from another well-known builder. And it never ran on this car. It ran like absolute shit. So I sent it to another guy twice, and it wasn't much better. So I was put in touch with Rob, and now this thing runs like fuel injection. Starts up, idles. When I do have the choke connected, it goes to high idle. So if you need a Q-Jet rebuilt, Rob Ross is the guy. That's the correct return spring. I have another one inside, as you can see, just for safety reasons. But that's should be green like that. And that's the correct color for the throttle cable bracket back there as well. Again, there's your other Whittick clamp. And knock on wood, they haven't leaked. So, and I've had them on here for about 1.5 years, almost 2 years. I'm running just a regular 455 stock distributor. No MSD, no fancy schmancy. Well, I shouldn't say that. It's the guts are the electric limited brakeless ignition. I'm very happy with it. I did send it out to Dave Knudsen. Out in Washington State to recurve and rebuild because it was a little bit loose. The shaft was loose. So he hooked me up. Good turnaround time. And this thing is dialed in now very well. And then here we go with the alternator bracket is also phosphate. As you can see. Don Hudson hooked me up with that. And then I have the double pulley, which would come on all stage 1 cars because they came with heavy duty cooling. That was recently plated. That Don also helped me out with that. One belt. They ran one belt on the outside. And then this alternator was rebuilt by a gentleman in Pennsylvania. Hold on one second. I did a fantastic job. It's date coded correctly for this car. I found it on eBay. And he even did the stamps. You can see the stamp on there. And then that BD stamp at the top of the screen, that would be the stamp that you would find on your build sheet. Not sure what the A is for, but maybe someone can chime in. But this is just a factory rebuild. Runs great, charges great. I did have some issues with the voltage regulator, which is actually the one that came with the car. Now, I had taken it off and replaced it with another one. But I'm charging fine. The car runs fine. All the lights work, everything works, so I'm in the clear as far as that goes. One other thing I have here is the wires. If you look, you can see these are the wires that would have come with this car. And they actually have a date on them. Let me see if I can find one. Hold on. I think I have one down here in my stash. I do. You see that? Where is it? Ooh. Come on. Right there. Come on. The fuck? There we go. Goodness, sorry. Getting dizzy. $3Q69. So that's the third quarter of 1969. Those are the latest ones that are available. They don't make a 4Q, unfortunately, but if it's before the build date, then you're typically good. All right, what else? This bracket here, holding the two heater hoses, is supposed to be on these cars. A lot of times they got removed for 69 and 70. Todd Miller has those available by way of Don Hudson, I think, still. And also the heater hoses. You see, again, I did keep the Corbin clamps up there. Heater hoses should be ribbed like this. You can see the ribs on them. They should have no markings. They shouldn't say GM. They shouldn't say Gates. They should just be plain and ribbed. I believe Todd Miller is carrying these now by way of the parts place. Speaking of ribbed, we have the overflow hoses. If you look, this one here, let me move over here, hold on. Sorry, I'm an amateur. This one has ribs on it and no clamp. If you look in the assembly manual, you will see there's no clamp on there. That hooks down to the radiator. Right there. Okay? And you can see the SJ tag behind there. SJ is correct for stage 1 and 70. I'm not sure if it's 455 or not, but SJ would also be the code that you would find on your build sheet. This hose is also ribbed. These are both thick-walled. Okay, you'll see there's a clamp here, because this is the one that emits the coolant into the overflow, and then obviously a clamp up here. By thick wall, I mean like that. All right, this is the longer one. Again, you can see the ribs on it. All right, both of these hoses have that same thick wall. That's what's correct. This hose is from the top that clips to the radiator is about 24 inches long, and this one is about 13 inches long. But they're both ribbed, and they both have that thick wall. You could buy reproductions, and they'll work. But if you're a complete OCD maniac like me, you'll scour some junkyards and try and find the correct one. That little yellow clip down there on the the frame, that's for the transmission lines. If this car was an automatic transmission, there'd be 2 lines running through that. All of these cars got that, whether they were a standard shift or an automatic. I know there's been some debate about that, but that's the way it's done. I've seen quite a few original cars in both junkyards and in person, or running and driving, I should say, that have that clip. I replaced that when I had the motor out. Actually, this is what it looks like. That's it. My oil pressure sending unit is a Napa piece. The original one I had wasn't working. I replaced this a while ago. But the original one, you can tell the difference. All right. It also has, this is an 80-pound one. So this is correct for this car. 646 2558. This was produced 296th day of 1969. That's 2969. This is another one I got from somebody. I know this works. So at some point I'll clean this up and put it back in, and hopefully it really works. And also, here's the fitting for that you would need. I took that out, so I'm glad I saved all this stuff, because I'm trying to buy it back at like triple the price. One more thing is, sorry, the alternator fan should be this finish. That was painted by the guy that rebuilt the alternator. You can see the difference. That's the kind of finish it should have. Maybe a little bit shinier, but I'll get around to replacing that at some point. This is the correct radiator cap. 15-pound. This is a repro from Cars. I haven't had any problems with it, so I'm going to leave it on there. And I think that covers it. You may have saw the chalk marks behind the voltage regulator. There was, when the motor was out and I had access to the Firewall, I also saw remnants of a 9-1. The color code for this Regal black car is 19. So 1919 is black top, black body, I believe. Somebody may correct me, but nonetheless, that's what should be there. You can't see the whole thing due to the voltage regulator, but I figured that'd be a cool little touch to add to it. I did replace the harnesses. Those I got those from American Auto Wire. They've been great. I also used non-cog belts. They're fine. Hopefully they don't spin on me and go shred to pieces under a load one day, but I don't know, I guess we'll have to wait and see. Anyway, as far as correctness and finish and fasteners and such, I just wanted to kind of touch on that a little bit. I know that this isn't 100% correct, but for me it's close enough. I'm sure there's a few other things I could do, but winter is upon us right now, so I'll have more time next year. All right. Thank you.